Hello, collective listeners. On today's episode, we have Sarah Ramey, Deputy AD and Director of Athletic Performance for West Texas A&M University. I first met Coach Ramey, 3-4 years ago. Absolutely amazing coach. Everybody who comes into contact with her leaves one happier from the conversation, but then two more knowledgeable. So I hope that she can give us really good insight, especially to our listeners, about the administrative side of things. Exactly what she does now is the senior women's administrator and deputy AD. She wears a lot of hats, and so I think she's a very valuable resource. And I think you guys will enjoy listening to what she has to say about her administrative roles, and then also just being a strength coach in general. Thank you for listening. What's going on, collective listeners? On today's episode, we have Sarah Ramey. Sarah Ramey is the Deputy AD and Director of Athletic Performance, which we were just talking about is an absolutely monstrous title. I love it, at West Texas A&M University. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Connor. Excited to have a conversation today.
Absolutely. And, I was excited. We first met, I think we were just talking about it 3 years ago over Zoom, because at the time I worked for Coach Gerlich, and you had worked with her in the past as well. And I had no clue what I was doing with basketball. And so Coach Ramey was actually the first person to really help me out and help me understand a couple of different things about basketball and how to program. And so ever since then, she's been incredibly kind. I actually got to visit West Texas A&M. We did a cool little game where Texas Tech came down and played at your arena, and then we got to see your full facility, which is like the most amazing D2 football facility I've seen. I absolutely love that. The field and everything that you had there. The weight room was fantastic too. It was like my preferred style of a weight room, where it's like it's about the weights. It's not like all this flashy type stuff. And so we've gotten to know each other over the years, and so I've been really excited to get on this episode because you've been a big help to me. So I appreciate it.
Well, it's been a pleasure to get to know you, and shout out to Brian and Scott, because the weight room only looks as good as it does because they helped me out back in May of '07 when I got this job while I was at the CSCCA conference, and all I had was this diagram of what my old weight room was going to look like. I'm like, I need a quote. I need to build a weight room and start a program. What can you guys do for me? And that was May, and by end of August, they had a truck loaded up from Las Cruces and brought it over to Canyon, Texas, and then we did a upgrade when we moved into our new space. But yeah, pretty old school, basic. Just keep it simple and get after it. So.
No, I love it. Those are the exact type of weight room I love. That's what I came up in as well. I always tell people, like, when I was in school at Philly, I lifted at a gym called Body Worlds, and it was like more duct tape than vinyl on a bench. Like those types of deals. And so when it's actually a serviceable weight room, but it is just focused on the weights, that's my favorite type of weight room. So I loved it out there. And then for our longtime listeners too, we were just talking about this right beforehand. You were guest number 16 on the Strength Coach Collective podcast,
Back
and then
in
now it'll be
COVID.
like number 143. It was back in COVID.
Yes. When they started it when they
Well,
started it up. So luckily we're past that point, and let's never do that again.
yeah, I would absolutely vote no on that. Besides the about month that you had of just staying at home, but outside of that, I'll take a skip on everything. Well, could you please, for those who maybe didn't listen to the original episode or just getting to know you, could you give us a brief background of your time in strength and conditioning, and then what led you to West Texas A&M?
So I was a student athlete at Wichita State, played volleyball. During my last semester, I was fortunate enough to intern for Mike Boyle and up in Boston and at his facility. And I preface this by saying that's when he still did front squat. So we know a lot of things have changed since then. And but that was an incredible experience just to jump right in. And I had worked with my college strength coach over the summers, but just getting that experience of you know 10 hours a day of being on the floor and coaching athletes from all different walks of life. Then GA'd for Rod Cole at Kansas State for a year, and then University of Colorado for 4, working with volleyball, soccer, and ski, and then assisting with football. I did a yoga certification while I was up there and did yoga with football while I was at CU Boulder. And then I started the strength program here in '07 and haven't left Canyon America, as we like to call it. So
No, I mean, it's one of the coolest schools, and from people I've spoken to, like Jared Boyd, right, who you know very well. Everybody who went to West Texas A&M just loved it. Like, and everybody loves coming back, and so it's such a cool environment. And I'm sure you've seen that over the years. If you've been as you've been the director.
Yes, campus has changed completely, and then just from an athletic standpoint, the facilities have just gotten better and better, and then we our number one goals as an athletic department are to win championships and graduate student athletes, and so that's the focus. And Division two, I just love the balance that kids have of being able to have a job, an internship. Yes, it is still about athletics and winning championships, and we've been second in the Learfield Directors Cup multiple times and been in the top 10. I can't tell you how many years in a row now. And so winning in everything is really fun. And that's what it comes down to is winning championships and being successful. So because that helps set our kids up for success after they leave here.
Absolutely. I mean, and that was, a similar situation when I was working with Texas Tech. We had Lexi Hightower come over from your school to come over here at Texas Tech, and it was like the hardest worker I've ever seen.
Yep.
Right. And what she would do on a daily basis and how she would lead was fantastic. And so, what I loved about it too was the camaraderie between the schools as well. I don't know if you'd really see that with another school, maybe in North Carolina, somebody coming to App State or somebody going somewhere like UNC, right? Because it would be kind of leaving, but it was so cool because you could see everybody from West Texas was so happy for her to go and play at Texas Tech for the year, and she was a massive contributor for us. She really crushed it.
Yeah, she'll go into our Hall of Champions here, and is a special player in person. And for her to be able to go and use that fifth year down there and reunite kind of with Coach Gerlich, who had recruited her in high school, was super special. And everyone, yeah, we would have loved to have kept her for another year, but completely understood why she would want to go and experience Division 1 basketball, and thought she could have a chance to have an impact. And so no, that was really cool. And I, for a while there, I called Texas Tech WT South because you had Coach Gerlich, who started her coaching career here. Tony Greystone, the head volleyball
Yep.
coach, was here when I first started, and then Coach Adams also coached at WT. So for a while, three major program head coaches had been at WT. So it's just WT South. So
There you go. I love it. I mean, but seriously, it's a, like you said, successful program with a lot of championships, and then those people, progress to that Power Five level and are successful there as well. So it certainly makes a difference. And one thing I'm interested about is that it's now this is your 17th year at West Texas, right?
mhm.
Okay, this is so rare for me to speak with strength coaches who are able to stay in the same spot for so long, making impacts like that you have. What has allowed you to stay there for this amount of time, and what goes into your decision to continue to work at West Texas A&M on a daily basis?
I think the biggest thing is my boss, our athletic director, Michael McBroom. He had been here. He had been in that AD chair for a couple years before I got here, and his first steps was to start a strength conditioning program, and also to amp up our sports medicine department. And he truly believes that the backbone of the athletic department is athletic performance and sports medicine. And when you have a boss that thinks that way, it's pretty difficult to want to leave this situation. He's also offered me the opportunity to step into the senior women's administrator role, and then also become the deputy AD in, I guess it's been 3 years now, but I became SWA 4 years ago. And then I also oversee sports medicine here, which is outside the norm for strength conditioning. It's usually the other way around. And so I've had some other opportunities throughout the years. I'm not been one that's applied for a bunch of jobs or kind of chased different things, because this is kind of like my child, being able to start this program. So it'd be difficult to leave, but just the relationships and then the opportunity to add the additional administrative roles. I'm volleyball's administrator, so game day, like I'm running the games, and I'm also their strength coach too. But um, I'm in charge of the games, and then having the different title. I've been able to apply for NCAA committees, which when you're D1, there's not as many. Well, there's opportunities, but I guess it's those administrator roles, there's a lot more administrators among along at D1 that are going to fight for those positions. And so once I was able to, I applied for the D2 track and field committee because we have a really, really good track and field program here that's won several national championships and finished in the top four on both men's and women's sides. And so started with that committee, and then for the past, I just finished my first year on D2 Management Council, which is in the governance structure. You have the President's Council for D2, and then you have Management Council, and so it's the highest committee I can be on without being a school president in Division 2, and so it's been a huge learning experience and networking experience, and being able to have a strength coach voice in that room I think has been really important. And also, they assigned me as one of my other duties on that committee to the competitive safeguards and medical aspects in sport. So that's the committee that works directly with the NCAA SSI, Sports Science Institute, with Dr. Hainline. And so I'm a D2 management council person on that committee, but I also add another strength coach in that room because there's only one strength conditioning expert that's allotted to that committee. And so I think that's important too. And I'm also a D2 strength coach. So I have a whole different perspective than the previous person that was at University of Miami, and currently Jamie Clinton that's at UT Dallas is on that committee for this year, and she's at a Division 3 school. And so I think it's important to have different perspectives from various levels of strength conditioning because your job is different now, right, than what you did at Texas Tech. Um, my job is different than anybody that's at a Division 1 or even a Division 3 school. So I think having those different perspectives in that room and being able to give them feedback on either best practices or what they may end up legislating down the road, because like the D1 holistic athlete model, that's all going to roll down to us at Division 2 at some point. But being in that room and be able to give feedback, and with the new mental health best practices that are coming out, I was able to give feedback along with the D3 person on management council that's on competitive safeguards on this is great and these are all really good ideas, but it's not practical for us to be able to implement this. So if we can have these core components, but some of this needs to be kind of added bonus if you're able to do it just based on resources, because every campus is different, whether they have an in-house mental health practitioner, whether you're using your counseling center on campus. And so I think being able to have that voice in the room. And then one thing to understand is that the D2 and D3 level, and I think more so at D1 now too, is that national SAT group has a big voice in those meetings. And national SAC, those kids are incredible, and I love our campus SAC and our conference SAC kids, but they're really your 3%ers on your in your athletic department. And depending on how much they really talk to the rest of their student athletes on campus, we as strength coaches, we're having these conversations every day. And so, okay, SAC has this opinion, but like I'm also talking to our football team and our soccer team and our softball team and our baseball team. Like I'm still boots on the ground versus sitting in an office, which most of the people on those committees are, administrators only. And so being able to kind of bring that mix of, the everyday person, that's still having the daily interaction to those meetings, I think has been valuable.
Well, I think that's like the thing I respect the most about you, right? And what I've loved to seeing what you do with being on these boards and being a member of this is a lot of people in strength and conditioning kind of tend to complain, right, about certain things or about how things are set up. Like I know one of the number one complaints is exactly what you spoke about earlier, which is that the opposite is it's typically a medical professional or somebody who is leading the athletic training or sports medicine area is the one overseeing strength and conditioning. And so, I think to me, when I talk with other strength coaches, it's like, well, what have you like really done about it? Like, have you had these conversations with one, that administrator, but then two, like, what else can you actually do to enact these changes? And exactly what you just said too about these rules and these kind of regulations come from people who may not be enacting it on a daily basis. So it'd be really hard to understand, even with resources, how you can actually, enact these things on a daily basis. But then, too, without resources, how do you even begin to kind of reach that subject, or how do you even begin to implement those things? And so, I mean, that was like one of my main questions: is what really is the importance of being on these boards to you? Because to me, it seems like you can actually help us make changes and help make the strength and conditioning lives not necessarily easier, but make it, kind of, I guess, kind of easier for the strength coaches to do their jobs and to help their student athletes on a daily
I
basis.
think no matter what level you're at or where you're at, it's really important for you to have those conversations with whoever your administrator is. If it is your athletic director, if it's your deputy or SWA, whoever is up the chain, like obviously follow your chain of commands, but set up those meetings to sit down with those people and have conversations and invite them into the weight room. They may not come, and that's what's something that I know a lot of people face. They don't show up and they don't come and see what you do every day, but you have to extend the invite and the hand to come to do that. And then just get in those rooms. It's so important. Like we have so much insight into our departments. And I think that's another thing that has kept me here is there's a lot of things that I've cut off before it even got to his desk as the athletic director, or I can give him a heads up, hey, this is coming, just a heads up so you can prepare. Depending on it might be something on a program standpoint or something our kids are talking about that's happening on campus. And so the more things that you can take off of your supervisor's plate or stop from happening before it even happens. I mean, it's no different than, during a workout, like you've got a workout with 60 kids in there. And, as an intern, what was your job? It was to make sure that things were flowing right, right? So, not traffic wasn't backing up, things were going smooth. It's no different now when you're in your full time role or you're moving up the chain. You still want to like level up and lead up the chain and make sure that things get cut off before they go awry, whether no matter what that is. So, and I think just your voice, our voices as strength coaches, is so important in those rooms. So, I mean, nobody wants to go to more meetings. I get that, but if you can get into a monthly administrator meeting or one of if they have a weekly one, if you could go in once a month and share some of the things that you're doing as a department, or where you kind of need some help, or just share some ideas. And then also, I believe your conference has the athletic performance coaches are an advisory group. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And so we have the same thing too for the Lone Star Conference. And I think that's really important just because it opens up those lines of communication across your conference to be able to share things. And then, and fortunate for me, I'm in that ADSWA room and I actually chair that committee right now. And so if there's something coming from the athletic performance group, guarantee it's going to get mentioned in that meeting. So, and same for the sports medicine group, because I'm not going to let that not get mentioned. And I've really tried to do that for everybody, whether it's the communications group. They've reached out a couple times on some items and said, well, it's not on the agenda, but I'll bring it up in the additional business of our meeting, because those people are important and they work their tails off and they're no different than us as far as needing more help or just need a voice in that room.
Well, it brings me back to something that somebody who you've worked with as well, Tori Stevens at Texas Tech. He brought up to me, the first time I was talking about traveling with a team, because I was, typically an intern or just a GA. And he said, the more time you spend around them, the better your relationship's going to be. And the better you guys are actually going to be able to communicate together. So that's exactly what you're saying is almost, quote unquote, traveling with the administrators, right? Going into meetings, getting to know them, and then they will be more willing to hear your voice or understand where you're coming from. And I think one of the frustrations that I see is I'll come into certain meetings and I've always seen with football, a lot of the times, I mean, I hate to kind of stereotype it, but a lot of times like they'll come off as very gruff and very, like give their opinion and then just be quiet and kind of sit there with their arms crossed for the rest of the meeting. And it's like, who would really want to listen to that, right?
Right.
And I know that you're busy, you're training. I mean, we've got our groups too, and I'm trying to do as much as possible. And so, yeah, there's certain things that I'm frustrated about, but at the same time, I I think it's only fair to administrators to actually bring up those things that you're frustrated with or things that you're dealing with to actually have those conversations. And then when it's a conversation instead of more of a targeted or kind of side remark, things will get done more and those relationships will be built better and more things can be achieved.
And if there's something that you really want, you've got to have a plan.
Yeah. Yes.
Come in with your proposal, make sure that you're succinct, whether you send it ahead of time and say, hey, I know we're meeting tomorrow, here's what I want to talk about, so if you want to go through this before I come in, so if you have any questions ready. I mean, I try to do the same thing with my staff, just so that they know when they're in this chair how to operate at the next level. Like, hey, if there's some new equipment that you want or some new tech, give me the proposal, like shoot your shot. Because I have to
Yeah.
do the same thing when I go into the other rooms. um, you know, write an agenda item, and because all of that is going to pay off down the road when you have to learn how to communicate up the chain, right? And whether you're talking to your conference commissioner, or you're having to address Dr. Hainline, or you're having to address you know Charlie Baker, the NCAA president. Like, you need to learn. We have those skills, but that's stuff that you have to practice and change your verbiage, and it can't just be a reaction email back to a sport coach when they want to change a lift time. Like, read it, go work with a team, come back, reread it again. Oh, nope, I probably shouldn't send that. Recraft it, and I think it's just really important, and because our voice is so important.
Hmm. And that proposal aspect too is something that I've been working on, something that I've been getting better about, right? Because I think the first couple years of my career was a lot spent on like, okay, I just want to get better as a strength coach. I
Mhm.
want to learn how to be better at these certain things. And I feel like I'm pretty comfortable with where I'm at as a coach. Obviously, I still want to continue to improve on a daily basis. But outside of that, it's like, okay, well, what can I do to actually impact the program here? What are things I can do to make the experience better? And so, there's a room right next to ours that they use for like, I think teaching parkour here at the school. And so I'm like, all right, I want that room.
Mhm.
Like I want to expand the weight room because it's a sliding wall, right? And so I came to our administrators and I said, I would like to, kind of take over the weight room. They're like, where's your proposal? And I'm like, yeah, I probably should have had that ready
Yep.
and make that a lot easier. And so luckily I worked with an administrator who was very understanding. He allowed me the time to kind of come up with everything afterwards. But I agree when you say having those things ready, having a lot of those questions that the administrators may have already mapped out and understanding, okay, what would the potential cost be, and having an estimated number, it makes it easier for those conversations to occur.
Right. It just saves time, because that's
Yeah.
that's their biggest asset is time. And you want to go in and be succinct and efficient, just like we try to be efficient with our workouts, right? Like, we want to keep our kids in, we want to train them minimal effective dose, right? That's
Yep.
the latest verbiage rolling around strength conditioning. Is So it's no different than when you want to go in and sit in and have those conversations. And then still, when you see them at a game, make sure you have those, just the bypass conversations.
Yes.
And when you're at games that aren't the sports you work directly with, those being seen at those is so important too. Because, oh, you're out at men's soccer, awesome. Like, they're probably just there for 10 minutes, making an appearance, but they see you there too. Make sure that you say hi and that they see you out there. And those type of just bypass interactions are really important too, because they think that we're just the weight room monitor sometimes, and that
Yeah.
goes a long way.
Well, I mean, and my fiance is so much better about it than I am. I don't even know if I've updated you on this on a personal level, but I did get engaged. It's the same
Congratulations.
person I was dating. Thank you very much. But she's moved with me from Lubbock, and now she's the director of performance nutrition here. And so it's been fantastic to work with her. But one of the things that everybody always says that they love about Tess is how involved she is, because she works with every sport. So she'll go to softball games, she'll go to track meets, she'll
Yep.
do everything to make sure, one, her athletes know that she's there and cares about them, but two, the administrators constantly bring that point up, and it's like, yeah, Tess is bought in, and it's like the phrase that we use a lot, and I think
Yep.
that a lot of people kind of hear, and it makes a difference. So
Yeah, she doesn't have
I
to go
agree
to every
wholeheartedly.
game, but when you
Yes,
don't go, the kids see it. They're like, "Coach, where were you?"
yes,
Well, my bad. You had 32 innings of baseball. I made an appearance for every game, but just didn't stay for all 32 innings. My fault.
No. But I mean, exactly it. Even if it's just a quick moment. I remember there was a downpour game we had with soccer, and she popped in for the first, like I think it was like the warm up. She's like, "Hey," and all the players just remembered that you were there and that you cared.
Right. Absolutely.
And again, it makes the same effect with administration. So, how has that transition been for you, coming from being a director of strength and conditioning to now transitioning into senior women's administrator and deputy AD? Was it a tough transition for you, or were there things that you had kind of had to learn quickly?
I think it's just been like adding on slowly. Thankfully, it was and I took over SWA and oversight of sports med February of 2020, and we all know what happened in March. So, thrown into the COVID protocol fire, so to speak. So that was not fun. But the rest of it has just been, learning, the people in the room at the conference level and interact. And it's been awesome because I can honestly say that I could call up any athletic director in the Lone Star Conference and have the conversation, and that means a lot. And to be able to go to a convention and meet all these other athletic directors from neighboring conferences that I know. And I've known athletics. There's only one degree of separation in athletics. You're gonna know one. There's no 7 degrees in athletics. It's one, and so you're always gonna know somebody that they either had as a coach, as an athlete. It's kind of ridiculous, but just being able to have those interactions and just be comfortable in those rooms, I think it happened pretty quickly, just because it's no different than working with our student athletes. But I think just the whole proposal thing, I maybe more of the written part as far as correspondence and updating them on meetings that I've had and making sure that you know it sounds administrative. I think has been that was the bigger part of the learning curve. But all the otherwise, it's all been good. I think it's our kids don't realize how much other things I do, except for when I miss a
Yeah.
week for meetings. They're like, "Oh, where are your meetings now?" But they don't really know to the extent of all the other things that I do on campus. Like I'm just still in the weight room because most of the days I still get to wear sweats, and then when I'm at a game and I'm in a dress, they're like, "Oh, you look really nice today." I'm like, "Oh, thanks." I'd rather be in my sweats with my beanie on, but
I will say my favorite transition for basketball has been from suits into the pullovers. I wear pullovers and joggers for every game. It's the absolute best.
that's for men's basketball though.
Yeah,
The women,
it is. It
most
is.
of the women's teams went back to looking nice on the sideline. I do appreciate that. It's still weird to me that the men's
Yeah,
teams
the
still just wear tennis shoes and pullovers, but whatever.
I've been fortunate enough. Both our teams here, men's and women's, do that.
Okay.
But I do love checking in with Texas Tech and seeing Coach Gerlich's sparkly
The
boots that she's
fits.
always wearing.
Yep, she's the
Yeah, the
queen. She's
fits.
the queen of the red fits, no doubt.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so it's not only within administrative organizations you're involved with; it's also within the CSCCA, strength and conditioning organizations. What's the importance behind being a part of those organizations? Is it hearing more of the larger conversation from other strength coaches, and then being able to apply it to your other positions?
I think that's part of it, and then I think also. Um, Corey Metzger, that's at Western Oregon. She and I are the first non-Division One strength coaches on the CSCCA board of directors. And again, I think it's important because our jobs aren't. I mean, I absolutely love Rob Glass. That guy is amazing, and I've learned so much from him sitting in a room and with these conversations as a board. But his job isn't the same as mine at Oklahoma State. And so I think it's important for them to also understand the perspective of a smaller school strength coach and how we do have to wear multiple hats. And then one thing I did this past year, the NSCA Women's Committee had a mentor mentee program, and so I served as a mentor for that program, and that was a lot of fun. I was paired up um, with a strength coach in Canada, which small world dates Carl, old RD Carl. You know Carl.
What?
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
Carl's
Carl.
girlfriend.
Are you
No, yeah,
serious?
she's like, I think you know my boyfriend. I'm like, who's your boyfriend? She's like, Carl. I'm like, no. So
No
yeah, you
way.
know, across
You're right, 1
country
degree of
country
separation.
lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of creepy. Um, so because Carl came up and did his ISAK certification stuff with us since
Mhm.
he couldn't use the student athletes at Texas Tech, so he came and did his assessments on a group of ours just so that he could fulfill that certification. But yeah, yeah, wild stuff. Um, but yeah, I think it's just important to be involved. Those are both really great organizations. I think they both provide a lot of education, and the CSCCA just in the past 3 to 4 years has really amped up the level of the conference, the education they provide with the resources from USCA and the research journal. I think has been huge, just because you can go through that and pick out the sports that you work with or just kind of do a quick scan. But I think both organizations offer so much in forms of education and continuing education that I've been members of both for 20 plus years and certified by both for 20 plus years, and which we were just talking about because my new GA just got his passed his CSCS last week, and I'm like, oh, I've been certified almost longer than you've been alive. Fantastic. That just means I'm old. Um, but yeah, it's I think it's, and then whenever somebody gets certified from the CSCCA, they come in and compare their number to mine on my certificate. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Of
oh,
course.
fun game. Yeah, because I think I got certified in the second year of that organization.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, I think it's just to be involved again, obviously getting to know other strength coaches, but from a board level, having an idea of what's going on, and then being able to share too with the other committees that I'm on, like I guess this year's Fort Worth for CSCCA, and then the next year is going to be Indy. Well, we're in Indy with NCAA office, so with the board, I've suggested that we get Dr. Hainline to come to the conference and speak, because in his mind, athletic trainers are quite a bit higher than the old strength
Yeah.
coach. So I think it would be really good for him to come and interact with strength conditioning coaches and see the education that is put forth during one of our conferences. And so I think that's really important to, kind of bring those together because they meet with NATA groups often. So, like, hey, next year's a great opportunity for the CSCCA to pull some of those SSI people in, and because you only hear the bad stuff, right, about strength coaches. You
Mhm.
don't hear the good things.
Well, it seems like kind of the larger theme of everything is just more interaction, more FaceTime with people so that you can start to understand and see where each other's coming from.
Right. And because there's 20,000 ways to do this, right? Like, how many times have you changed what you've done and still had
Yeah.
success, and seen people do it completely different than you and they have success? And, it's no one does it perfect and never will. And because there is no perfect. And that's what
Yep.
makes, this profession great. And, I always say being a strength coach is the best job in athletic department because we get to work with everybody, but we never pick a starting lineup.
Oh,
I don't
exactly.
know who's
That's the
on.
nicest
I
part.
don't know who's a walk on. I don't know who's getting a full ride. I don't know who's a partial with D2, and like, just come in and go get to work. Let's have a good time and get after it. So I think that's, that goes to say across, organizations too. Just get yourself involved and show your interest. You never know where it might take you.
And your advice would be just to ask, for strength coaches who are looking to get more involved, to potentially be in some more meetings, or to be in your committee meetings for your conference.
Yeah, and if your conference doesn't have an advisory group for strength conditioning athletic performance, I think that that's probably a great first step, is to get so then your voice is heard on your conference level. And so talk to your AD or your SWA and then someone at your conference office on how to get that going. I was fortunate the first year for the Lone Star, Judy Sackfield, who was the SWA at Commerce, she had got the ball rolling, and Josh Stoner was their strength coach at the time. And then Josh left to go to SFA. And I said, well, shoot, now I have to be the chair of this group. But it ended up going really, it's been great. And then, I'm able to share a lot of that information from competitive safeguards and SSI and make sure that they get that email, because they might not get it passed down from their head trainer or their SWA AD that gets that email sent to them directly. So I always try to I pass that along to everybody in our conference, to make sure that they see that information, which during COVID was extremely important because when
Yes.
the algorithms got changed on return to play and all of that, then they could go to their trainer and say, hey, when are we updating this? Like, this is new. Like, this is shorter now. Like, what are we doing? And probably made a few trainers upset, but our like our role and our voice is important in that. Like, that's information that we need to know.
Well, we'll be the ones who they first work with, as soon as they come back in
Right,
those situations.
right,
Yeah, and so I agree. I think exactly what you've been saying this whole time is, a lot of it is our daily execution. So how can we actually have our voice be heard, so that we can make it, best for us and then best for the student athletes.
absolutely.
And we talked about the sense of community with West Texas, and how enjoyable everybody seems to have their experience be there. One of the coolest things that I love that you do is your newsletter that you put out, and it's updates within strength and conditioning on former athletes. How did that first kind of come about, and then what have you liked about doing that newsletter?
So I guess we started sending out a weekly department email with, conference standings, game recaps, that kind of thing. And they were wanting to kind of engage some of our student athlete alumni a little bit more. And so I was thinking, and I might have been after the Chiefs' first Super Bowl championship and the whole run it back thing was going. And I don't know, I don't know, it's probably on a bike ride or on the trainer one morning. And I'm like, oh, run it back with Ramey. And because nobody here calls me anything but Ramey. So um,
Yep.
I like, that's kind of fun. So I talked to our SID and put together the questions and then just started, I have a lot of connections. And that's one thing I've been here forever. I've worked with a ton of sports. And if I didn't work directly with a sport, I had the interaction here in the weight room or at games or other events. And so I know kids from every sport and they know who I am. And so, you know, I've never directly worked with softball, but there's a ton of them that I still talk to and have interaction with. And so just started, reaching out either through text or through social media and asking kids if they wanted to be involved. And, the reception's been great from former student athletes, from our boosters and just we have so many kids that have gone on to do awesome things, whether they're a doctor or an executive or whatever it might be. And so to be able to share what they're doing now and their families, and I think it's just really cool. So I think the most recent, um, it's somebody's probably I think the most recent would have been gone for at least 8 years. So I've got a lot of time to get through. um, and I kind of started out with a lot of our student athletes who are in our Hall of Champions, from my time here, from my first several years. And so just kind of started there. And I try to spread it out across all the sports. But the biggest thing is like getting them to respond. Like I'll get an email out and I'll send multiple reminders and I just don't get a response. So it's no different than anything else. But it's fun to get that back and just try to get ahead and get that sent to whoever's made. Thankfully, I don't have to make the graphics. But
That's
yeah,
nice.
no graphic making in my repertoire. So they we get those out and they've kind of gotten into the cadence of every 2 weeks doing an update. And yeah, it's just a lot of fun to be able to share that, and the kids appreciate it and their teammates, and it's fun to see how much interaction each one gets, um, across the different platforms. But it's been really fun to do that and just learn about their lives now and what they enjoyed. And some of the stories are pretty funny too, because we don't include all the answers. So some of the things that they send back are pretty funny. Because I asked, like, what's something funny that a coach said once that's appropriate, and then some of them put the inappropriate lines in there. I'm like, yeah,
Of
we're not
course.
putting that in there,
Yeah.
but thanks for sending, because that made my week. But yeah, that's been the biggest thing, is just to involve the former student athletes that poured so much into this place, and to see what they're doing now.
Well, I mean, I love reading the newsletter, and I don't know any of them.
Yeah, and
Really.
it's
So,
it's they the for really I'm one of the few people that are here for some sports that still work here. And so when they come back for a game, like the first place they come is the weight room. and
Yeah.
that's special. And then I'm holding babies and chasing kids around the weight room and showing them the new football stadium or showing them the new training room. And I've kind of become the mayor when on home football weekends, like, okay, who do I get to show around this weekend? Which I love that, to be able to show them how many things have changed around here since they left.
Well, that's what I'm curious about too. Is that, I mean, as you're talking about this process, how's the process been for you to see your athletes grow into people with full families, or run businesses, and kind of deviate from the time that they were 18 to 21 years old?
I think that's why we do that, this job, isn't it?
Yeah,
So watch them grow. Like, we obviously love to see the growth that they have while they're here, but then once they leave, to for them to be able to go on and be successful in the world. And then you gotta love the email or the text or social media post or response when a kid says, "Hey, coach, you remember that time you told me such and such? Yeah, I should have listened." Or ones that are coaches now, and they're like, my big thing is don't drop the dumbbells, because we've
yeah,
got the older Samson dumbbells, and if you drop them, you're gonna crack them, and they're gonna we don't want that to happen. We don't have the iron grips, so
yeah,
and so they're, know how many times I say don't drop the dumbbells in the weight room. If you can't put them down, don't pick them up. I'm like, see, I taught you one
there
thing.
you
If
go.
I taught you one thing in your time here, so
I love people who become coaches,
oh yeah.
because it is. There's so much stuff that comes into it, and like because I see some of our guys. I love both the teams I work with. I mean, all three actually are fantastic on a daily basis, just from talking with them and what they retain and the information that they kind of hold in. But sometimes I can see, like, why the hell is he talking to us about hydration again? Or about eating a pre workout snack, and then all of a sudden they become coaches, and then they're like, yeah, nobody does any of the stuff that they need to do as an
You're
athlete.
like, yeah, so you get to pound your head into the wall just like I was pounding my head into the wall with you. Okay,
One giant
it all
cycle.
comes back around, guys.
Well, the last thing I wanted to touch on as well was your own athletic endeavors. So you're a multi-time Ironman finisher. I mean, the last time we spoke, it was a lot about road biking. What are you getting into now?
Uh, I after the Ironman stuff, I got into mountain biking because we've got Paladero Canyon just down the road, second
Mhm.
biggest canyon in the U.S. Tons of trails out there, and also gravel riding. Just because we have a bunch of dirt roads in Texas Panhandle. So did the Dirty Kansas. I think it's called Unbound now. It's a 200-mile gravel race up in Emporia, Kansas. Um, haven't had as much time to ride as I used to, unfortunately, but still try to get out on a mountain bike and have three mountain bikes. That's probably bad to say. You got to have your hardtail and your full suspension. And then I started riding a rigid single speed probably 4 years ago because no squish and just one gear. You just pedal and brake. That's
Yep.
pretty simple. Like, we think about too many things in our job. So when you get on a single speed, there's nothing to think about besides braking and pedaling. So it makes it simple. But no, I think it's just been fun. I really signed up for an Ironman on a challenge from a college friend that was a thrower at Wichita State, and you know dove into that for several years, and it was a lot of fun. Met a ton of great people, and we're all athletes at heart, right? We grew up playing sports, whether it was just through high school or high school and college, and then we're around this competitive environment. So just an opportunity to compete again was what really drew me in to begin with, and then it became kind of like my meditation and a time away from this, and just trying to get outside. And I mean, there's nothing better than riding trails and finding your flow state on a mountain bike trail. Like, that's kind of hard to beat. You can do that on a road bike, but it's just not the same. uh, but you've started running more, so you get that. Like,
Yep.
you kind of get in the zone where either you're listening to you're locked into your music, or you're locked into nothing, no thoughts, no nothing, and it's
Yep.
amazing. And then you come back to work, and you're better because of it. So I think it's really
Absolutely.
important to have something that, I mean, whenever I interview GAs, I'm like, well, what do you like to do in your free time? They're like, lift weights. I'm like, what else? Which I love that people love to lift, and I love that they still love to train, but like, it can't be your only thing out that you're
Mhm.
interested in, because it's got to be outside of this room, because I don't want to see you here that much, because I will come back and tell you to leave and go home if I think that you're here too much. And so Um, just having that outside outlet and just having a different group of people that you might ride with, or if you ride by yourself, any of that I think is just important. So
Well, you bring it up, something outside of the weight room is so valuable, but then the cardiovascular aspect of it too is massive. Like I remember I took an EKG class, and I was bad about going to class in college, if we're being 100% transparent. But this is the one class I showed up to every time because our professor would always just drop these small things that I thought were so valuable. And his main thing was like, if you don't do cardio exercise, you're really, really shooting yourself in the foot from a health standpoint. Like it doesn't matter, how great you look. I mean, you need to actually be doing some form of cardio exercise. And so that got me involved in things like you're saying, running. And it's such a nice relief because in basketball and having women's golf, I may be here at 6:30 in the morning, starting to lift with the women's golf, and then men practice at 5 o'clock, and so all that time during the day, I have about 2 hours. Like it's nice to go for a run, and then for me, what happens is that first, maybe 2 3 miles, I actually kind of think about things with work,
mhm,
and then I solve it while I'm running, and then after that, it's like okay, now I can just totally space out and not worry about
right,
anything.
absolutely.
It makes a massive
And then you
difference.
come
Yeah.
back and you take a shower and you go to practice, and your energy's better and you feel better because you took care of yourself a little bit, and we
Hmm.
do have really long days, and I think that that's important, whether you're the boss or you're not the boss of your department, that you make sure that, like, we don't sit here and watch the weights not move. That's not doing anybody any good. And
Yeah.
so make sure that, hey, if you don't have a team until 3 o'clock, I'll see you at 2:30. Awesome. And then you
Yeah.
finish at 7. And then tomorrow you might have a morning group, and then you're done at 9. Okay, if you stay till 10, as long as you're taking care of your teams and you're taking care of your programming, I if I see you, I see you. If I don't, even better. So, because
Yeah.
across the
That
year
our
we work plenty of hours and we have weekends and games, and it all balances out. And so I think you know to you got to get out of the room.
our director says it all the time. He's like, I literally don't care where you are. Like, as long as you're here for your lifts and I don't hear anything bad from the coaches, then we're totally good.
Stay off my
You
desk.
know,
That's what I tell my staff.
I love
Yeah.
it. And you brought back, this is just a quick story for Palo Duro Candy. You just reminded me. So, you remember Scott Ramsey at
Uh
Texas
huh.
Tech, correct, with men's and women's golf. And so he and I were good friends. And so we would always kind of go on weekend escapades. And we went out to Palo Duro one day and we did the Lighthouse
Hmm.
Trail on the bikes. It was early in the morning. It was like, so easy trail, like we really enjoyed it. And then it was like, we did it early. So it was probably about 10 a.m. when we finished. And I'm like, looking around, and there was another trail that we could go off on. I can't remember exactly which one. I'm sure you would know it, but Scott's like, "Well, why don't we go on this?" And so yeah, it's like perfect. And it started off very similar to the Lighthouse, and then all of a sudden it gets into rapid, rapid declines. This is my second time ever mountain biking, and like I did not have proper equipment whatsoever or know what I was doing, and so he was right behind me, and we're picking up speed, and all of a sudden I'm like, man, I don't think I'm really built for this one. And then it's a specific drop off. It's pretty steep, and it was like you can go to the right or you can go to the left. And so I chose right, and Scott chose left. And as I'm going down on the right hand side, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna make it. Like this is totally good. It's like a small narrow bridge, and I kind of get across it. And then we talked about cussing right before the podcast, but it was a nice little 4 letter word come from Scott, and I look behind, and he is in the air, and he's got no hands on the
Oh
bike,
no.
and his bike is separate, and then and then he dips down into a small like canyon, and I'm like, he might be dead. Like he legitimately may be dead right now. And then we go over, and he just stands up and gives me the thumbs up. He's like, I'm
I'm
good.
good.
But and every single time I just think about Paladura Canyon, I think about him just absolutely separating from the bike, going into the ditch, and it was because he chose left that day, and that was the wrong
Yeah,
choice.
yeah. If you don't know those trails, they'll definitely jump up and grab you, no doubt.
I learned my lesson quickly. So, well, thank you so much for coming on. It was really great. Just one for me to catch up with you and get to talk with you again. But I really appreciate your perspective on more of the administrative side and how strength coaches can really advocate for themselves and make a difference within the field. If anybody has any questions for you or wants to reach out, what would be the best way to do that?
Email's great. S Ramey, Ramey, at wtamu.edu. If anyone has interest in, how do you get involved at the NCAA level, or any questions, I'm happy to have a conversation for sure.
and it'll be very beneficial for anybody listening. I mean, seriously, it was a great conversation we had, just a few years ago. So I appreciate it greatly, and I'm sure anybody else who's listening appreciates it as well.
Well, thanks for the time, Connor.